When we were talking about these corrective actions that you as a project manager can implement to, let's say, to correct the schedule variances, fix any, let's say, schedule delays. So these common corrective actions, as we've discussed as key techniques, including the common corrective actions include the fast tracking. The fast tracking here, it it overlaps the tasks to save the time. So you can conduct two tasks in parallel if they have no, let's say, dependency. So the fast tracking, which overlap tasks to save the time. Again, crashing, when we talked about crashing, crashing means adding more resources to speed up the work. Also, you have this, let's say, a technique which called rebaselining. So rebaselining means adjusting the schedule baseline if necessary. So, you readjust the baseline based on a change request with a justified reason. With an approved change request, you rebaseline or you reset the, let's say, the original schedule baseline if necessary. The critical path, let's say, analysis for schedule control. So again, the critical path determines the shortest possible project duration. You also have these concepts you might face at the exam, but the most important here, you need to understand what exactly the critical path is. So the critical path, again, here, it helps you to find the longest, shortest possible project duration. You also have this concept of float, which is known as slack. You might, be tested their meaning or understanding their meaning, applying it to one of these real world scenarios. So the float or slack, it refers to the amount of delay a task can have without delaying the overall project. Again, the float here means, or the slack means, it refers to the amount of delay a task can have without delaying the project or the overall project timeline. And the total float is the amount of delay. Okay, so we finished from talking about the float or slack. You have this total float, which is, let's say, it's the type of float. You have the total float and you have the free float. The key difference between the total float here is the amount of delay a task can have before delaying the project. Again, total float here means the amount of delay a task can have before delaying the whole project. On the other hand, you have the free float. And the free float here, it means the amount of delay a task can have before delaying the next task. So the key difference here between the total float and the free float, again, the total float here, it's the amount of delay that a task can have before delaying the whole project. But the free float, it's the amount of delay that a task can have before delaying the next task. Let's have an example here. Let's say in a software development project, a delay maybe occur in user testing that would directly impact the deployment. So this task was identified as part of the critical path, and extra resources were allocated to prevent the delays. We also have these types of resource optimization techniques. And the two techniques here you have is the resource leveling and resource smoothing. So resource leveling means adjusting the schedule based on the resource constraints. So you level all of your tasks into, to accommodate the available resources. The next one here you have is the resource smoothing, and the resource smoothing means that you ensure the efficient resource utilization without impacting the critical path. These are important concepts. I encourage you to understand them and see more example about how to apply resource leveling and how to apply resource smoothing, because you might, be tested at the exam asking you that maybe a project manager has faced with shortages and resources, and that might impact the SPI or the schedule performance index or the schedule or the cost of the project. So what are the best, let's say, techniques that to optimize the resource usages, or to ensure the efficient use of these resources. So you have the resource leveling again, you have the resource smoothing. So you need to understand the difference between them in order to help you answering the exam question correctly. Now let's move to the schedule, or using the schedule forecasting. And schedule forecasting also, it can be considered as part of the, say, the AVM. So the forecasting here means for the schedule, it means like forecasting, the schedule, it helps you predicting the schedule performance. So based on the current trend of the schedule delays or the schedule advancement, you can, let's say, predict or forecast the future schedule performance based on the data. You have this estimate at completion, which is the EAC formula. The EAC formula means the estimate at completion, and it can be calculated as the budget at completion, which is known as the BAC, which is back, divided by the SPI or the schedule performance index. So ensure that you understand these formulas. So in case of that you are tested at the exam, you know what are these components of each of the calculation, and that will help you and understand what does it mean. So again, the estimated or the estimate at completion or the EAC formula, it can be calculated as the budget at completion, which is known as the BAC, divided by the SPI, which is the schedule performance index. And we are going to cover all also when we come to controlling the cost. We're going to cover the budget at completion and the back and all of these other, let's say, related formulas that is depending on the controlling the costs. Let's have here a case study where is an aerospace project. So let's say an aerospace company developing a satellite faced a schedule overruns due the supply chain delays. Remember that we have now, after we have covered that, we have, let's say, schedule overruns or schedule delays. Now we need to take a corrective actions. And these corrective actions can include applying schedule compression using fast tracking technique, also using trend analysis to predict the future risks and the future delays. You might also adjust the resource or adjust the resources to high priority tasks that might need to spend longer time than the others. And a result of applying these corrective action and these techniques, it can help the project to be recovered by, let's say, a certain time, also improving the stakeholder confidence and cost control as well. To summarize our scheduling control session here, we talked many times about monitoring the SPI or the Schedule Performance Index and the SV, which is the schedule variance. We talked how to calculate them. So the SV, you need to, let's say, to deduct the EV or the earned value where minus or the, say, the planned value. Then you have the SPI when we talked about how to calculate the schedule performance index by, let's say, dividing the AV with the, let's say, with the PV, which is the planned value, to detect any schedule risks early. Also using the trend analysis and forecasting to predict the future delays. And we also have seen how to apply the schedule compression technique when necessary, and on ensuring that the change requests go through a proper approval process.